Thank you so much for attending our webinar on relationship health as mental health. I'm Dr. Carla Chugani. It is an absolute pleasure to be here with you today. And before we get started, I just want to introduce our two guest speakers, two incredibly phenomenal women who I have the privilege of knowing. First up, we have Katie Hood. Katie is CEO of One Love Foundation, which is an organization that has really become one of the nation's leaders in terms of educating young people on the topic of healthy and unhealthy relationships, both in terms of primary prevention for relationship abuse, as well as an investment in the relationship health of the next generation. Prior to her work at One Love, she worked with the Michael J. Fox Foundation and as a philanthropic consultant and visiting lecturer at Duke University's Sanford School of Public Policy. Katie has received her bachelor's degree in public policy from Duke and MBA from Harvard Business School, and currently serves on the Dean's Board of Advisors for Harvard Business School and the President's Advisory Council of Concordia College. And second, we have Lisa Evanesky, who is the Title IX coordinator at SUNY Oswego. She has had an incredible career spanning more than 30 years in higher education, serving primarily in Title IX, student conduct, student orientation, and Res Life. She has presented and consulted very widely, both nationally and regionally, specifically related to her work around Clery Act, Title IX, and Violence Against Women Act. She has been absolutely instrumental in campus-wide compliance with Title IX at SUNY Oswego and holds responsibility for all the training, prevention, and response to sexual and interpersonal violence, state and federal compliance around this, as well as reporting directly into the president's office. So huge welcome and thank you to our phenomenal speakers who are going to be joining us today. At a high level, what we were hoping to do with today's webinar is really to have a conversation about relationship health as a key component of mental health. We know that relationships are a critical and yet pretty challenging developmental task for college students. So I'm really excited to be digging in on this topic today. So to kick us off, Katie, I was hoping we could get started with a question for you. I know that at One Love, you're really focused on relationship health and in general, ending relationship abuse. But I'm curious if you can talk a little bit with us about how your program has evolved over the years.
Sure. And thanks to you and Mantra for having us here to talk about the importance of this work. For those who don't know, One Love was started out of a relationship violence tragedy, which was the death of a college student named Yardley Love in 2010. And what her family realized after the fact, and I first got involved as a friend of the family, was that if a domestic violence expert had been in the room, they would have seen all the signs that this was an unhealthy and increasingly dangerous relationship. But no one around Yardley, including Yardley herself, had been trained to understand the signs. So her family really set out to fill that gap. How do we educate young people about the warning signs of abuse? And in the process of doing that work, we realized that, human beings don't want to think abuse can happen to them. It's this thing we like to think happens to other people, other places. But we could have the same discussion about warning signs and cast it in the language of healthy and unhealthy relationships, and the opposite thing would happen. Everybody knows they've been in unhealthy relationships. Everybody sort of knows they've done unhealthy things. So we started talking about healthy and unhealthy relationships because that was a place that people could hear what we were talking about and understand the immediate relevance to their lives. So in terms of how it's evolved, that's the first piece, is the language we use. We've really moved upstream. We're trying to get to educate about the earliest signs of an unhealthy relationship before it becomes abusive. And also, I would say over time, what we've seen is that the receptivity to this sort of education has increased dramatically. When we started this work 9 years ago, there were colleges that said to us, oh, well, relationship abuse is not an issue that's relevant to our students or on this campus. We don't hear that at all anymore. And increasingly, what we also hear is the exact topic of this discussion today, not only is relationship abuse a real issue, but actually our students' relationship health will affect their mental health. And so there's a much greater interest in bringing this education to campuses across the country.
That's incredible. And yeah, I think that really resonates a lot for me in terms of that evolution that you're describing, and the language shift from sort of the intervention after abuse has occurred to a more upstream approach. I know, at Mantra, we're definitely really focused on upstream approaches to mental health as well. It's just so much easier to maintain well-being, whether that's relationship health, emotional health, physical health. It's so much easier to sort of build and maintain from a healthy baseline place versus having to kind of remediate after something really unfortunate has happened.
Yeah, I think that one other thing I would add to that is, but our program can be prevention and intervention at the same time. Mm-hmm. So we're getting ahead of the issue, but at the same time, there are people in every room that our programs reach that go, I need help, or I have a friend who needs help. And so it's amazing because you can use the same content, the same language to do both the prevention and intervention side of the puzzle.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. So wondering if we could dig a little bit deeper into some of the specific programming and initiatives related to relationship health that happen on campus. And Lisa, I know that you have worked on a lot of different programs. I'm wondering if you could just tell us about some of them, maybe some of the ones you're most proud of, or some of your favorites.
Sure. So we definitely dove right in. We found out about One Love in 2015 and got ourselves trained immediately and started out with their first product, which was de-escalation workshop. But we had some of the same questions. People were saying, well, this looks like an unhealthy relationship. What do you know about healthy relationships? So that was before kind of One Love dove into the 10 signs idea. And so we had a number of different workshops we were already doing before we got connected to One Love. But it was like 1 or 2 workshops. And now we're doing 13 to 15 different types of workshops every semester. We work with students, student athletes, student organizations, Greek organizations, student employees. We pretty much saturated our campus with this training, and when people would ask us, well, why do I need to know this? We would explain, everyone needs to know this, right? Like Katie said, we all maybe at some point in our lives have experienced or at least witnessed somebody's unhealthy relationship behavior. So we all need this information. We cover all topics, including anything that falls into sexual and interpersonal violence, including stalking, including sexual assault, and even sexual harassment. And we find ways to customize the One Love products and put it into ways that our students are, what they're looking for. We also do some special events. We have a Love Better Month every February. We also do Domestic Violence Awareness Month in October, Stalking Awareness Month, and Sexual Assault Awareness Month. But we don't do just those months, right? We tell our students from orientation to graduation, you're going to hear from us. This is stuff we're going to talk about. And like Katie was saying, there are people that think, are we really seeing this on our campus? Yeah, we're seeing this on our campus. We're seeing it with our students. We're seeing it with our employees. And we need to get in there and at least offer the help or offer the help to friends and family. So when the person is ready to talk to us, we can help them. And like you had said, my office also oversees all of it right now. So all of the, prevention, all of the training for employees. Our employees have gotten involved. When we do Yards for Yardly, it's not just the student athletes that show up. It's the fourth floor finance fanatics that signed up as a group because they think this is important and they want to be there and show support. We have people from all over campus, all functional areas that show up and say, this is important. We know this could happen here. We know something as tragic as this could happen here, and we want to be part of the solution.
That's phenomenal. And I am hoping we could dig a little further into how you navigate the language and communication skills component within the work that you're doing. As a therapist, one of the things that I sometimes encounter is that students don't always have either the language, the skills, or maybe just that sort of comfort or confidence level to be able to discuss relationships or to have a sort of more difficult discussion with a partner, whether it's a romantic partner, a friendship, or could also be an intimate or sexual relationship. It can be difficult, especially at this age, to have that confidence to set boundaries, to have a confidence to set limits, but also the self-awareness to know what your limits are, to be able to set them in the first place. And so I'm wondering, we'll start with Lisa, but I'm wondering if you could each talk a little bit about how you navigate this in the work that you're doing.
Sure. Yeah. I think, one of the interesting things that we see when we bring out some of the language, when we're processing some of the videos, when we're talking about the 10 signs, we get students that ask questions like, well, my partner cheated on me. Isn't it okay to check their phone? And we talk about trust, and we have that conversation about why it's important to build trust. You're either in it or you're out of it. Work on the trust. We see, anywhere from 200 to 300 cases a year. We have students that during the COVID years, it was very difficult. They were not out, of their homes for the most part, and they were not learning these skills, even just easy skills like things that how to have a disagreement with someone in your classroom, things like that. And so when we got a new batch of students on campus, we were like, oh, geez, they don't know how to talk to anyone. They don't know how to ask for dates. I don't know how to ask for sex. So I think really just kind of going back to the basics of that. And, we developed a program called 4 Things where we talk about, consent, healthy relationships, bystander intervention, and sexual harassment, where we just kind of talk about the main basic things for all first year students coming in. These are some things we want you to learn. Here are some ways you can learn more. So I think that that's really, really important. And also helping friends with these conversations. I would say almost every time I do a workshop, I get either a student or an employee or both that comes up to me to say, hey, I think I need to talk to you, or an email the next day. Hey, I think I need to talk to you about my friend or about my relationships. So really, I will reach out to students and say, yeah, just come on in. Like, you don't have to tell me everything. If you need help with something, I'll give you help. It's just a meeting. We're not going to report anything that you told us. I'm a private resource. I can have those conversations with you, and I'm not going to do anything with that information. So I think that what we have done here is really create that culture of reporting, having some confidence in our system that we are going to help you and not just try and investigate your case. We're here to help you. And that's been really powerful.
That sounds like a really important distinction, especially when you're asking students to get involved in a system that often has a lot more power than they do as individual students, to really make it clear that this is about helping you, not about an investigation or reporting requirements or those kinds of things. Katie, what about for you in your work in terms of the, sort of communication, limit setting type of challenges that students are facing?
Yeah, I think you've heard already Lisa refer to the 10 signs several times. I think one of the most important things One Love has done is establish the 10 signs of healthy relationships and the 10 signs of unhealthy relationship. And we can go into deep discussion with kids as young as elementary school, but all the way up to adults about what these signs are and how they show up. And I think that knowledge, I always say that the thing we all have the most experience in life is our relationships. And yet we code those experiences in emotion and not in language. But now we have a language we can point to, and we're increasingly finding the 10 signs is one of our most popular frameworks, because the 10 signs you can apply directly to your life and understand it better now. So I think that's a huge thing. I think the other thing that Lisa's been doing such a good job of is once you normalize that this is a conversation you should have versus act like it's a conversation, it's not your business. The world is in the process of relabeling this issue, not as one of a family issue or a private issue. It's a public health issue. And so that's a combination of changing the language and also normalizing this conversation. And what we're seeing is that kids are relieved to have this conversation. They feel safer being able to talk about these things. And we're seeing young people step up to lead these conversations in their community with great frequency.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to dig more into that, but I saw that we have a question in the chat. So we've referred to the 10 signs a lot, and someone is asking, can you give us the rundown on these 10 signs? Wondering if you'd be willing to run through that really quickly for us.
Sure. I carry this around in my wallet, but if you go to our website, which is joinonelove.org, you can find them there. We started with wanting to understand unhealthy. So I'm just going to read off the unhealthy behaviors: intensity, possessiveness, manipulation, isolation, sabotage, belittling, guilting, volatility, betrayal, and deflecting responsibility. So those 10 signs, you can find countless examples of how those signs show up, both in our film-based workshops, but also in the media we consume every day. We have really interesting discussions with young people about what belittling is. Like, teasing in a relationship is a normal part of a relationship. Teasing is fun, which is one of our healthy signs. But when there's a harder or meaner edge to it, when you feel like you're getting taken down in a conversation, that becomes belittling, and that's something different. Another one of my favorite ones is deflecting responsibility. When you're in an abusive relationship or an unhealthy relationship with someone, it's always your fault, not theirs. And so being able to recognize that when you express a concern to your partner or the person you're seeing, and they say, well, if you didn't do that, I wouldn't have done this. That's not such a healthy behavior. You want somebody who says, I'm so sorry, let's talk more. So those 10 signs of unhealthy are, I think, and you, Lisa, I would ask you to echo this if you think it's true, the young people can immediately find the examples in their life and understand the behavior they just experienced versus feeling sad or anxious or depressed or whatever emotion they might have coded it in before. And then on the health, go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, I was going to say, absolutely. When we use, any versions of the One Love videos in our trainings, one of the things we'll do is we'll say, okay, keep an eye out for, things that are good or things that you're concerned about. And they can name them, they're like, that was inappropriate, or this was, not healthy, or this was healthy, and, and why. And I think that that's been really great to see, is that we're not even necessarily going over the 10 signs with them before they watch the videos, and then we go over them with them after, and they can pick them all out before we even get to the list of 10. Yeah. So
we taught about unhealthy first, but the first question after every workshop was, how do I help a friend? Because people recognize, I know maybe it's them, but they know somebody who needs help. The second was, what does healthy look like? So we developed the 10 signs of a healthy relationship. These are comfortable pace, trust, honesty, independence, respect, equality, kindness, fun, healthy conflict, and taking responsibility. So what you end up being able to do is have really nuanced conversations about, like, for example, jealousy is a common topic in discussions, and jealousy is a normal human emotion. It's what you do with that jealousy that can be then unhealthy, or if extreme jealousy that has intensity and volatility and isolation, that's no good. That is unhealthy, and that could become abusive. But jealousy itself is just a normal thing. So it's really this opportunity to define words and have kids use both fictional examples and their own life examples to bring the words to life.
Absolutely. And thank you, Katie, so much for running through. We're getting a lot of good questions and comments about this material. So I think it's resonating for lots of folks. And so we'll continue to try and pull in questions as they align with our discussion topics. One of the things that I wanted to dig in a little further on, I remember actually the first time I met you, this was one of the first questions I asked you, I think, is that, so we're doing this prevention education. We're talking about what we're talking about what healthy relationships look like. We're talking about what unhealthy relationships look like? And we know that there are lots of different kinds of relationships that folks are having. And I'm wondering how you all at One Love are tackling the work of doing this type of relationship abuse prevention education in a way that expands beyond heteronormative relationships.
Yeah. So it's really been a really important part of our evolution. When we started, we learned very quickly from experts that abusive relationships unfold according to a pattern. They sort of follow the same pattern, so that we said, oh my gosh, that's a teachable pattern. And it is a teachable pattern. And that's why we're so optimistic about this education, because it's really relevant to all. But as we moved along and did more work, we realized just having one product isn't enough. Not only do you want to be able to teach the pattern, you want people to be able to see themselves in the work so that they personally identify. We had an educator in Baltimore say to us, escalation, which is the story of a white heterosexual couple in a relationship on a college campus. It's an amazing product. It's still one of our most used products. But this educator said, you're speaking to my kids' heads, but not to their hearts, because these people don't look like them. So we have really focused on expanding the stories we tell, and frequently using young filmmakers to develop this content, young and diverse filmmakers. And now we have 17 different workshops, or will by the end of the year have 17 different workshops available to be used. They all anchor on the 10 signs. They all anchor on the core teachings, but each community or each person can decide which one they want to use, which is going to resonate the most with the kids I serve. And I should put in here, like, all of our resources are free. We're not charging for this curricula. Anyone, anywhere, we raise money privately so that anyone, anywhere can use the tools to educate their communities. But yes, this showing multiple stories, showing how this common issue affects multiple different kinds of people is a huge priority for One Love.
Yeah, I really appreciate that about the work that you all do. And I'm curious to hear how Lisa has integrated this as well, as sort of a more like managing programming on a campus. What has that looked like?
Well, in my office, being a member of the queer community, it's always been in the back of my mind. So if I can work it into my job, I do, in ways to serve that community. So for us, when we first started our prevention and training programs, it's always been a part, right? Prevention of discrimination against students based on their sexual orientation or their gender identity, which both fall under Title IX. We do a number of things here. We host safe zone programs. We make sure we focus on those particularly special days like, Coming Out Day or Trans Day of Remembrance, Trans Day of Visibility, things like that, Pride Month. And also finding ways to collaborate with student groups or other offices that do this work. So, and then our spin on it then is, of course, we'll do, handouts that are specific to, what's unique about dating violence or domestic violence in the LGBTQI plus community. We'll look at things like that. And, in terms of helping people in the field, I've done a number of workshops and webinars for folks at other campuses, especially in other states even, that might be struggling to help serve this population because of the type of their campus or because of the location of their campus. So I think that's also really important as a profession. There are a lot of Title IX folks that are out there trying to just share what they've done with others. I think that that's really important. But yeah, we've just made it a part of the work that we do. And then also finding ways to connect it to things that are happening in classrooms or connect it to things that are happening with student groups, or even looking at our students and their intersectional identities, and trying to find ways, what might be a unique situation in the Black and Brown communities about reporting, right? Mm-hmm. Similar to what would be maybe different for the queer community in reporting, and just talking through those pieces and talking about that, it's only a meeting. I think I'm going to make that my next t-shirt, because I really want people, that's like the most important thing I say at training. Well, there's lots of important things, but that's the thing I harp on most, because I don't want someone to feel like if they come to me about their peer who harmed them, that the whole community is going to be wrecked, because of it. So I work with them on just kind of nuancing the response as well, depending on the situation and depending on, the ripple effect it could have.
Yeah, that's a really important point about the disruption to the community as a concern during reporting. Taking a more logistical focus for a minute, if you both wouldn't mind. I think one of the things that can be a challenge is that, in higher ed, we know how important this is. We know we need to do it. And then as educators of young adults, we're also very attuned to how important relationships are at this phase of life. But that does not necessarily equip us with the knowledge, the sort of practical and logistical knowledge for how to bring these initiatives and resources to campus. And so I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what the experience was like when you got started with One Love and how it was to bring this to your campus.
Sure. So we had this nurse actually in our health center sent me a video that she had a friend who had gone through some of this, and the nurse sent me this video about One Love, and I reached out immediately. I was like, this is what we're looking for. This is what we need. And, it was a really seamless process of just, scheduling ourselves to get trained. And they have a number of different ways to do that. There's a great online learning center now. Back then it was, people like showing up online or in person. But it's not that difficult. It's not much of a heavy lift to get trained. So, I recommend it. Again, like Katie said, everything they have is free. So it's easy to do. I think it's also about getting the support across campus. When we did our first trial of a workshop, we brought in students and employees and athletes and people to our first attempt and asked them for feedback and asked them if they would be interested in having their students or employees go through this workshop. So that's one of the things that we did. We also, we're just not afraid to try anything. So when I get a new video from One Love, they're like, hey, we have a new video. And I'll be like, all right, let's try it. So I think that's a really good lesson for across the board, like with any of this prevention and training stuff is you're going to figure out what works for your community by trying some stuff out. And if you ever need help, I'm here for that. But I think also using peer-to-peer education stuff has been really helpful. We had a number of students and employees trained. And, at first, kind of the sustainability of the student part was a struggle. So we made sure there were enough employees trained to keep it going as we cycled in new students, but really getting our students involved in that. And I think one thing that my intern team has done and also my student employment team is they're out there all the time. They're out there with swag, they're out there with stickers, they're out there with handouts. And, we're normalizing prevention, right? It's, we're making it fun. We're doing all the things to try to make sure that people know that we're here and what we stand for and what our community expects. So I think that that's been really, really powerful to see on our campus. In fact, I see, faculty tell me all the time, students open their laptop and my stickers are all over their laptops. And I think people use swag in a way to say, this is what I stand for. Like, I need you to learn how to love better, or I need you to understand how to ask for consent, depending on what the message is. So I think that that's been a really good way. And I told some of my students this weekend during commencement that I was going to be on this webinar with Katie Hood. They were like, really? And I'm like, I know. And so they know who Katie Hood is even, so because we're quoting her all the time. But so yeah, it's you're a superstar, you're a rock star. So, but it's normalizing that, right? It's like everybody, I walked in the hallway to get to the room I'm in, and I saw people with little stickers and buttons on their backpacks, and so there's people that just everywhere people want to be a part of it. Like you said, Katie, they were asking for this language, they were asking for this help, and I think that's what's been so powerful for us is we just started and we immersed our whole community into it, and we've saturated the campus, and people keep asking for more.
I certainly would like some stickers too. One of the things that I was reflecting on as I've been listening to you speak, Lisa, is you are such a phenomenal and very persuasive advocate for this work. I would follow you anywhere. And on the other side of things, I know that, for whatever reasons, maybe sometimes it's our voices and sometimes it's just the amount of money that's available in the budget. Our offices for these types of initiatives are not always well funded, right? And no matter how hard we push, we may not always get access to the resources that we would like to have truly comprehensive programming and initiatives around relationship health and violence. And so, Katie, I'm wondering if you could address this reality and talk a little bit about how One Love can support folks on the ground who want to do this work, but who may not have, a huge budget to do gigantic programming.
Well, first of all, you're 100% correct. And when I started here in 2014 and shared our escalation film with people in the DV community, people at colleges, their answer was, this is incredible, but no one's going to have the money to support distribution of this work. So prevention has been woefully underfunded in every part of the world, or in every issue, but in this issue in particular. And so One Love's goal from the start was, we know that there's probably going to be pretty small teams dedicated. I mean, Lisa has been a one-woman team until now, relying on one woman plus volunteers or interns to get the work done. She's getting a person now, which is amazing. And these departments need to expand to meet the need that is there. But in the meantime, from the start, we built our program with an eye to empowering non-experts to use these workshops to start this conversation in their communities. So a non-expert could be an English teacher. Sure, it could be a social worker, it could be a domestic violence expert, but it could be an English teacher, it could be a parent, it could be a high school student. And so what we tried to do is create tools that empowered non-experts to lead these discussions and start these conversations. So what that does is it radically expands the number of people that can teach. And for an issue of this magnitude, and we haven't really said the stats, but more than 1 in 3 women, 1 in 3 men, and over 1 in 2 transgender and non-binary people will be in an abusive relationship in their lifetime. If we just rely on Title IX offices or domestic violence experts to do the prevention work, we're never going to get there. So again, One Love sweet spot is we radically increased investment in prevention resources and tools that can be accessible to all. And so that is, I think, our contribution to the field when it comes to, but you can create the tools and people might still be intimidated to use them or not quite know how to use them. And in addition to the Ed Center, which was already referred to, we actually have a partner success team at One Love that if you write in and say, I'm really interested in learning more, they will show you how to use the tools, how to use the Ed Center. They'll give you best practices that other schools have used. Our goal is to build relationships, even if we're not right in your backyard, with anyone who wants to take these resources and use them in their community. So it's a combination of actually investing in the tools and in a model that means you don't have to have higher education to use the tools. And then also giving you support along the way and creating a community of people that are sharing best practices with each other.
Absolutely. And as you're speaking about this, it's incredible that you have a lot of different tools available, and not just the tools, but the supports, because there can be a big lift with new programming, even when it's your job to do programming on campus. Learning new programming and delivering it with high fidelity and in a way where it really hits can be kind of daunting. And so there's a related question. Lisa hit on this a little bit already, but one of the things I was hoping that you both could just lean a little further into is this question of how do we make this type of prevention programming engaging or even fun in some instances for our students, because there's so much that comes at students in terms of programming all the time. How do you get it to be engaging? How do you make it stand out on campus?
Sure. So I'll go first if that's okay. I talked a little bit about, the swag and things like that. Certainly when we do our large scale events, people want to be involved in that. They want to get good representation of their team, whether it's their office or their club or their classroom. I have faculty members that will sign up a whole class and bring them to Yards for Yardley, things like that. But we also do a number of what I would call edutainment tables. My interns and I will come up with activities that will help people think about, is this a healthy relationship or not? We have this activity, I think we bought it online for some ridiculous amount of money that I will share with anyone who wants it. And it's not copyrighted. But it basically was like healthy, unhealthy, or not sure. And we just read them little scenarios and then they decide healthy, unhealthy, unsure. The interns ahead of time practice it. We have little swag gifts to give out, but it's engaging people. And it is, it's just making it more positive as well. Like, oh yeah, that's a good answer, and just having students have that conversation with other students. So that's part of it. We've also just engaged students in different majors in this. So, I have a certain number of intern types of majors that I oversee, but then I also reach out to our student artists on campus and pay them to create some of these designs and t-shirt designs, sticker designs, things like that. Another way to connect to the curriculum and things like that. And then, and I'm also willing to share all those designs. But also, finding students that are passionate about this for whatever reason, they saw a webinar, they have a friend involved, and getting them together to figure out what else do we want to do? What else could we do to make this interesting for you, fun, engaging, all of those things. So those are some of the things that we've done.
Yeah, I would just simply say that I think when the decision was made before I got here to use fictional film to teach, that was just a hugely positive decision, because as we all know, we're all video consumers and young people in particular love video. So, and not doing a documentary, but doing actually fictional stories allows people to put themselves, you feel the suspense build as you're watching our films. You are participating, and while you're watching the film, you're understanding its relevance to your life. So it's a really engaging experience. I also would say that away from the films we create, our team is increasingly working on how do we use examples in pop culture and popular media to then lay the 10 signs against those, so that actually the media that you are consuming when you're not in school, we can now put the 10 signs layer over it and you're like, oh, aha, and I have 4 kids, they're all high school or under. And I see them put this to work actively when they're in my house, because they know they can't help but know the 10 signs. But when they see it, they're like, whoa, that's intense, And so you realize, like, it's not just the One Love workshops, it's that the 10 signs can be a tool for framing the content they're watching in lots of their parts of their lives. And then the last thing I would say is community. And a lot of the young people who get involved with our work, some of them have been in abusive relationships, some of them have not. But what they feel like they are doing is helping other people and building a community. There's something about the work that once people want to help their younger self. Like, I do this work partly because I know it would have helped me feel safer, be a better partner, avoid dangerous situations. And I think that part of the community, which is so positive, this helping other people, really comes through in our student leadership programs and in our clubs. So it really gets translated. It's not just a curricula, it's a community. And if you can do that shift, first of all, just starting with the curricula is enough, make that curricula engaging. But if you can shift to make it a community, as Lisa has done, it takes on a whole another world in terms of the impact you can see.
It's interesting too. I want to share one more thought after hearing you say that, Katie. We have this really strong internship program, and every year I have to ask permission to hire more because people want to be interns in our office. And when I asked them why this internship, almost all of them connected to their future work. I'm going to be a school counselor. I think I need to know this. I might be a psychologist. I need to know this. I might be this. I need to know this. Like they're all ready and they want to help their friends now, and they want to help their future job situations. Like, so I think that's amazing that students are thinking about that and what the programs that I'm doing can help get them ready for what they might see in their future jobs.
Yeah, I love that. I hear you both talking a lot about the many different ways that students benefit from this programming, take it with them throughout their life and their journey, and that shared language and shared understanding that develops as they learn the 10 signs and begin to see those signs represented in popular media. As a professor, there's this little part of me that is like, oh man, that would be so cool in like a literature class to have, you know, to have a piece of this curriculum integrated into that curriculum where we're learning literature, but we're also interrogating it and talking about, you know, maybe some of the stereotypes that this type of story reinforces. We are unfortunately running short of time. I'm pretty sure we could talk for 5 more hours and not run out of things to say. But the last thing I wanted to do before we open the floor for Q&A is just invite both of you to share, you know, are there any final takeaways, any final thoughts that you'd offer for higher ed leaders who want to tackle relationship health on their campus?
I mean, I would say when we started, and we still, I mean, one of our major goals is end relationship abuse. And I really appreciate higher education leaders being more honest about the presence of relationship abuse on their campus and looking for ways to bring in prevention education to help handle that. But I also think like really understanding like healthy relationships, I think consider them the building blocks of healthy communities, the building blocks of healthy individuals. And it's a new area. Somebody said to me, wow, it's like a new field, but it's not, it's a field that makes a lot of sense. So what Lisa said about, you know, just jump in and experiment. Don't be afraid. There's resources out there now. There's schools like Lisa's, like my alma mater, Duke, is tackling things in a slightly different way, but there's experiments start talking to each other because there are experiments to run. And I can promise anyone who brings this sort of work to their campus that there is a positive impact of doing that work. There will be kids who raise their hand and realize they need help. You know, we always think about Yardley. Would she have realized if we showed up at her campus, would she or a friend have realized she needs help? That's goal one. The second is, how do you change the climate of what's permissible or not? And the way you do that is you start conversations. So I don't think it's as risky an area as people felt like it was 7 or 8 or 9 years ago. And I would encourage anyone to just jump in and to view us as a resource. I know Lisa would be happy to be a resource too, but there's a community of people starting to do this work and we'd welcome everyone to join it.
Yeah, and I think the only thing I would add to that is, you know, ask for help from people like me, because I will have a Zoom meeting with you. I will have a phone call with you. I will send you PowerPoints. I will send you swag designs. I will log onto your Zoom and do a workshop training, maybe not a training for One Love, but a workshop for your students so you can get practice doing it. These are things that every time I'm on a webinar I offer, and someone always hits me up. So I saw Michael Harley was in there typing. So Michael, if you want to type in my email address, I'm more than have people reach out to me. Now that I hired someone, I have a little bit more free time. So yeah, I ask for help.
Incredible. And I want to thank both of you for sharing your time and your insights, your incredible wisdom with us. We do have some questions in the chat that I'm hoping we will have time to answer. So folks, we have about 15 minutes left. We're going to answer questions in the order that we receive them. So if you want to get typing, we do have some time to answer questions for you. So the first question we have is, do you have suggestions or resources for students who are or who are not out in terms of various LGBTQ plus identities? A student not acknowledging a partner in public because the partner isn't popular feels like a huge red flag of an abusive relationship. Not acknowledging a partner in public because that would out the speaker feels different, but still potentially hurtful. Wow, that's nuanced. But yes, totally, right? Like I can see how that would require some thoughtfulness.
To me, the line there is around what are the conversations that you're having together, and what is the partner's understanding of each other's situation. If you're making somebody feel small by not acknowledging them because you're not comfortable with your own identity, or they're not popular, their identity is not popular, that is a hallmark. That is an unhealthy basis. This is not like an even, equal relationship. It comes in with the idea that someone is not as good as, and that's pretty much always not the way you want to start out a healthy relationship. Mm-hmm. I do think, though, that the threat of outing is something that's used in abusive relationships. So not respecting the boundaries someone might have about others understanding their identity if they're not out yet. I think there are partners who manipulate and use that. So I think that we talk about, and we have discussion guides now specifically focused on LGBTQ plus relationships, and making sure that we have examples to help illuminate the nuance here, because relationships are nuanced in every way. I don't know if you'd add anything.
No, that was perfect. Yeah.
We actually have another question specifically for Lisa this time. So the question is, we've used Behind the Post a lot on campus, but do you have experience with other One Love products such as Friendlets, Because I Love You, MVP, etc. on campus? I'm wondering how college students react to the other films.
They love them all. Sometimes when we do Behind the Post, we do it with a few of those different ones. So we'll do it to kind of introduce the topic, and then we'll kind of move to more serious types of videos, and it kind of gives people an idea of what we're talking about. So yeah, I mean, I think what's great about it is you can kind of pick and choose and try the different things. I use Because I Love You to kind of warm up a room full of workshop participants. And then we might show Love Better or Love Labyrinth. They're similar-ish, and then talk through those. But I think students love everything we do with One Love. So I think, one of the great things about having so many things to choose from is you can kind of stagger your programming. If you have student organizations like we do that might send the same officers every year, you can offer different workshops, for the people that might have already seen Behind the Post, or maybe have already seen Escalation. So yeah, I mean, I think it's just figuring out what your main goal of your workshop is. We've even done the couplets or friendlets in the campus center at one of our tables, where we talk through, we show them one of the videos and then we talk it through a little bit. So just finding those kind of like on the move ways other than a workshop to use. But yeah, we've used all of them, and I think we just kind of pick and choose based on maybe who the audience is.
I would only add Friendlets are specifically geared towards elementary and middle school. So I think they go a little younger, but yep. Couplets, I have like grown adults who love the couplets. So I think they're usable everywhere. MVP is one of our newest pieces. It's actually created by the same young person who created Amor del Bueno, which is another one of our films. And MVP is the first that really highlights that young men can be in abusive relationships too. And I think that's something that sometimes gets forgotten. I think MVP is super powerful because it shows what it's like for a young Black man who is in an abusive relationship to work with that and how it impacts his friendships and his life.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's so many good resources. Well, we We don't have any more questions in the chat. And one of the things that I'm mindful of is in the digital age of all meetings on Zoom, everyone's scheduling meetings back to back and not actually getting up from our desks, taking bio breaks, maybe getting something to eat. And so I think this might be a good time for us to wrap up if there are no more questions. One more that I just want to highlight, CHES credits. How do we obtain CHES credits? So I'm not aware that Mantra is issuing any credits for this presentation. Do either of you have any input on that for this? Yeah, I didn't think so. Okay. So unfortunately not issuing any credits for today's talk. But do want to thank our speakers, Katie Hood, Lisa Evanesky. It is always such an absolute pleasure to speak with you, and I really hope we get to do this again soon. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, yes.
All right, and I'm seeing a lot of thank yous, and you're amazing. You are absolutely amazing in the chat. So I say we should go ahead and wrap up and give people a couple of minutes to stretch their legs and digest all of this wonderful information. So thank you again. I hope everyone has a fantastic rest of their day.